The back pattern. I already posted the front pattern a few days ago. Here is one thing to remember. Our front shoulder to waist is usually longer than our back shoulder to waist. My front shoulder to waist is 17.5 inches and my back shoulder to waist is 14.5 inches. And that changes a few things when drafting the back pattern. We would need to erase the lines from the front waistline, the front hip line, and the front knee line. On this back pattern, we are going to maintain the bust point line, the armhole line, and the shoulder line, and I would label this back. Next, I would mark my back shoulder to waist, which is 14.5 inches. Then proceed to mark my hip point, which is 9 inches. Finally, I would mark my knee line, which is 23 inches, and label. The next step is to form our basic neckline for the back, and I will be working with a standard neck width of 3 inches and a standard neck depth of 1 inch. Then I'll proceed to connect the points just as shown. Next, divide your shoulder width by 2 and mark. In order to account for the slant on the shoulders, I'm going to come down from the shoulder by 1.5 inches and I would mark. Then proceed to connect just as shown. The next step is to form our back armhole curve, and I will take you through a 4-step process. First, measure what you have on your shoulder line and mark that same thing on the armhole line. Then connect the points just as shown. 2. Divide your bust circumference by 4 and mark. 3. Locate the midpoint between the shoulder slope and the armhole line and mark. And finally, connect the point with your French curve just as shown. And that forms your back armhole curve. The next step is to mark our darts. In order to do that, you would have to divide your bust span by 2. My bust span is 8 inches. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. I will proceed to mark that 4 inches on the waistline, bust point line, and on the hip line. Then proceed to connect the points just as shown. Just like we did in front, I will be working with a dart intake of 1.5 inches. I will divide that into 2 and I would mark 0.75 on both sides of the line. Then proceed to connect the dart legs just as shown. In order to complete our dart, the length of the dart from the waistline will be 6 inches, which I marked. Then proceeded to connect the points just as shown. Next, divide your waist circumference by 4 and mark. Measure what you took as your dart intake and mark. On the hip line, divide your hip circumference by 4 and mark. In order to make a straight dress, measure out exactly what you have on your hip line and mark that same thing on your knee line. Proceed to connect from your armhole line to your waistline, from your waistline to your hip line, and finally from your hip line to your knee line just as shown. And that forms your straight dress. In order to form your pencil dress, go in from that point by 2 inches and mark. Then I went ahead to connect the point with my ruler, and that formed your pencil dress. In order to avoid pointy ears on the hip line, blend the hip curve just as